Hi, everyone, and welcome to How to Use Coaching Techniques to Solve Your Next Fundraising Challenge. I'm Michelle, and I'm really delighted that you've joined me today. Thank you so much. I know that everyone, time is tight, so I really hope that you'll come away from our short time together feeling like you have really practical tools to solve whatever fundraising challenge is going to come up, and I'm sure there will be lots that will be thrown at you. Just a bit about me. I am a consultant and I'm a fundraiser myself. My focus has primarily been in high-value fundraising, major gifts, corporates, trusts, and foundations. But I more and more love to support teams and fundraisers who are starting out because I make no secret about it. When I started fundraising, I was a really, really bad fundraiser. So much so that I actually wanted to leave the sector completely because I just wasn't getting the results that I wanted. And I just felt, when you were so frustrated because it's just nothing's working. And it was only when one of my managers invested in me and started giving me the training that I needed, and I started applying that training, that things started falling into place and I started getting the results that I want. And so I want to always share that with everyone else because I don't want anyone to feel the same way that I did, so helpless. But also I want people to feel that they have the tools that they need to be successful in their roles. So before we start, I just wanted to do a quick check-in poll with everyone, is whether you are a manager or not. And I'd love for you to answer for me what the answers is not really important. It's just to, as I said, to get a sense of where the group is and how many managers we have and non-managers we have. And let me close that poll and let's share the results with everyone. And I don't know if everyone can see that, but 48% said yes, that they are managers, 52% no. So we have a really nice split. And what I'll say is, if you're not a manager, that doesn't matter. The content that I'm going to be sharing today is applicable whether you are starting out, or let me just say, if you at least have had, say, 6 months to a year's experience, and then and it's also great if you're a manager. And why I ask that question is that I'll speak from my personal experience, but once I became successful in my roles, I actually got promotions that I wanted and more senior roles, and with that often comes managerial responsibilities. But no one really teaches you how to be a manager, and that is something that I really struggled with, that I had really finessed how to be a fundraiser, but then I have this added element of how to be a manager, and it kind of threw me off course because I didn't know how to do it. And these are one of the tools that I was taught and that I use in my day-to-day manager roles, but completely applicable if you are not a manager as well. So thank you so much for sharing that information with me. So what we're going to cover today is I'm going to share a bit about actively listening, which is the foundation of of coaching. I'm going to share with you a coaching method that I've used that is very easy to follow and applicable to a variety of situations. And I'm then going to show you how you can apply that technique to a whole lot of different fundraising situations. So regardless of whether you are doing community fundraising, major gifts, you in individual giving, you work in arts and culture, you work in development, whatever it is, the technique is the same. And then also how you apply to get the best out of your team if you're a manager, or just to get the best out of the people around you if you're not a manager. So the first thing is that we're going to start by discussing how to actively listen. And I want to jump from this starting point because active listening it forms the basis of a coaching technique. So, I'm jumping straight ahead, but what I mean when active listening, I mean really, really listening to what someone's saying and hearing what they're saying in a way that you can easily respond to them. And I just wanted to share a story with you to demonstrate how to active listen. So I'm just going to jump to a different screen, and I want to share a story. It's just close to 3 minutes. I'm sure many of you have heard this story before, but I want you to really listen to the story and practice active listening. That is really following the story. And I know it's a distraction because it's on a screen and you've got your emails and you're on Instagram and you can see something on the corner of your eye. But this is the task, I suppose, for today, is to listen to this story. So put on your concentration, hat on, and let's listen to the story, and we'll answer some questions at the end.
A walk in the forest. One day, Goldilocks decided to go for a walk in the forest. Pretty soon, she came to a house. She knocked on the door, and when no one answered, she walked inside. At the kitchen table, Goldilocks saw some bowls of porridge. Goldilocks was hungry. She tasted the porridge from the first bowl. "This porridge is too hot," she said. So she tasted the porridge from the second bowl. "This porridge is too cold," she said. So she tasted the porridge in the last bowl. "This porridge is good," she said. And then she continued eating until she was full. After eating, she decided she was a little tired, so she walked into the next room. There she saw some chairs. Goldilocks sat in the first chair. "This chair is too big," she said. So she sat in the second one. "This chair is really too big," she cried. So she sat in the smallest chair. "Ah, this chair is just right," she said. But suddenly, the chair broke into small pieces. Oops. Goldilocks was tired, so she went up to the bedroom. She lay on the first bed, but it was too hard. She lay on the second bed. It was too soft. Then she lay on the third bed. It was just right. Goldilocks fell asleep. While she was sleeping, the three bears came home. "Someone's been eating my porridge," said Papa Bear. "Someone's been eating my porridge," said Mama Bear. "Someone's been eating my porridge too," cried Baby Bear. "Someone's been sitting in my chair," growled Papa Bear. "Someone's been sitting in my chair too," said Mama Bear. "Someone's been sitting in my chair," cried Baby Bear, "and they've broken it into small pieces." The bears decided to look around, and when they got to the bedroom, Papa Bear growled, "Someone's been sleeping in my bed." "Someone's been sleeping in my bed too," said Mama Bear. "Someone's been sleeping in my bed, and she's still there," cried Baby Bear. Goldilocks woke up, and when she saw the bears, she jumped up and ran out of the room. Goldilocks ran downstairs, opened the door, and ran into the forest.
Okay, it's end of story time. And now that you were listening to that story, I wanted to get your answers to some questions. How well was everyone listening? So, true or false that Goldilocks was a small girl? Any answers? That is false. The story did not talk about her age or her size. The next question. Goldilocks knocked on the door before entering the house. That is true. Papa Bear's porridge was too hot. That's false. We know the first bowl of porridge was hot, but we don't know if that was Papa Bear's porridge. So now I'd love to know, how did you do on our little quiz? How did you find the listening exercise? It's a silly exercise, but it's to really demonstrate that when it comes to someone telling us something, whether it's a story or a problem or a challenge, it's actually really difficult to actively listen, to follow exactly what they're saying and not fill in the gaps for ourselves. And that's why I purposely chose a story that we're all familiar with, because we do tend to do that. And maybe I'm jumping ahead, so I'll keep that thought for later on. But just to say that often the challenges that come to us might look very similar or sound similar, or things that we've experienced, and yet so we fill in the gaps automatically when the details might be different. So oh, I also forgot Goldilocks broke the baby's chair. That was one, and that was true. So how can we practice active listening? It really is a skill set like anything else, which takes practice. And some of the techniques that I've used is, one, to focus on what is being said, not on your answers. So often, behavioral scientists have shown that when someone's talking, what we're focusing on is formulating our response to the question, rather than, or whatever the statement is, rather than focusing on what that person is saying. So that's a big mindset shift, to rather think about what is being said rather than how I'm going to respond to it. Practice a lot. So I have done this technique with teams called the holiday listening exercise, where you put people in pairs, and you ask someone to describe the last holiday they went on, and it can just for 2 minutes. And then the other person has to repeat back their answer, but using the exact same words that the person used and in the same order, so that you have to concentrate fully on how someone is structuring their sentence and the words that they are using. And then also another thing way to actively listen is use the repeat and confirm technique. So when you're having a conversation with someone, it could be a colleague, if you work face-to-face with donors, or even when you are calling someone, if you have to call the doctor, or you have to call your Wi-Fi provider, whatever it is. If they've said something, repeat it back to them and say, confirm. So then you can say, oh, so what I'm hearing is that for me to change my Wi-Fi package, it will cost me an additional $50 a month. Is that correct? And then they can confirm that back to you. So that's in an everyday life, but I use this technique a lot when it comes to, if I'm working one-to-one with donors, then I'm in a meeting with a major donor will say something, and then I'll often repeat back. I'll say, so what I'm hearing is, it's really important to you that your family is involved in your philanthropic giving. And they can confirm it, and it reassures the person that I've listened to them, but it also makes certain for me that I'm on the right track and I have actually listened, because I might have interpreted things differently. And as I said, I wanted to just focus on this, although we haven't got into the nitty-gritty of the coaching technique itself, because the coaching technique is underpinned by active listening. Coaching is all about you listening to someone else and steering the conversation in a way that's going to get them a solution that they want. But if you're not listening to what they're saying, it's very, very difficult to steer the conversation and to be a good coach in whatever issue is being brought up. So active listening underpins all of what I'm going to be saying now. Oh, and then the other thing I wanted to say is around distractions, is that it's so easy, especially now. I'm still working from home. I am, we're doing online meetings, but the camera's not on, and then I'm just like chopping some vegetables. I may be scrolling through my phone. I'm also one-eyed checking my emails. So there's so many things that are happening that means that I'm distracted from the conversations that are actually taking place. And that is, again, another key thing to active listening, is to remove those distractions and actually focus on what's being said. So now let's talk about the actual coaching method. So as I said, the coaching method uses the basis of it is that it's one person who's the coach steers the conversation for another person who is facing a challenge or an issue, and the active listening is part of what the coach needs to do. But as a coach, you also need to steer the conversation in a way that's going to get your coachee the solution that they want. So a good way to start off is by saying if you're having a conversation with someone and you want to use the coaching method to solve your fundraising challenge, is to say to someone, what would you like to talk about? Or what would you like from our conversation? And I often say this to people because I say to people, do you want us to coach through a situation? Or do you just want to vent and rant or gossip about what's going on? And so I need to know what someone wants from the situation in order to respond in the correct way. And then once I've set the intention for that conversation, I'll use what I call the GROW model questions. And these are a series of 4 different types of questions which steers your conversation in a way that gets you to a solution. And we'll go through each of them individually. So it's around goals, reality, options, way forward. But I just remember it's GROW. That's the method that I use. So when we talk about using this GROW method, there's active listening, but it's also with how you're going to steer that conversation and get people to open up to you and answer is by asking open questions. So things like what, where, why, how, tell me more, or if. Those are things I also use in my donor meetings. But if I'm ever having a challenge with someone at work, I will use those kinds of questions. But I tend to see that when I'm lazy, I will default to questions where someone can say yes or no. Did you email that person? Did you write that email? Instead of using more open questions, which will help me with getting someone into a coaching conversation. Because coaching and we'll talk about it a little later on, what coaching implies is that you are not giving someone a solution to a specific thing, but rather you are helping them come to the solution rather than you giving them the solution. So before we get into how we can use that coaching, let's just talk about that method itself. So I know I've spoken about active listening, which underpins it. Then I spoke about the open questions. Now I'm going to show you step by step how you put the 2 together. So hold on. So the first thing is, remember our acronym, GROW. The first is goals. So then you're going to find out what the person needs or wants to do. And so here I've put some of my favorite open-ended questions. And like Marcella said, this is all going to be in your charity how-to library. So you can have these, and I'm not going to get any awards for presentation for the next few slides. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to make it just very simple and clear so that you could just print these slides out and use it to practice coaching. I found that really useful for me in the beginning when I wasn't comfortable asking these kinds of questions, but I needed prompts. So you can just take these slides, print it out, and then use it to ask people questions. So the goal questions are things that you want to ask people. Where do you want to get to? What do you want to achieve? They're things like, what's your goal? What do you want to achieve? What is happening that you wish was not? What will success look like? What's at stake if it isn't resolved? What will you gain from resolving this? So all the things about what the end goal is, and them actually painting a picture of what that goal is for themselves. So those are the open-ended questions you see. They are the what's, where's, why's, how's, tell me more's, and ifs. And by using those open-ended questions, you're going to elicit much more complex, deeper answers from someone, as opposed to saying, do you want to put on a successful gala dinner? Yes or no, that's a yes or no. But if you're going to say to someone, what will success look like for you if you put on a gala dinner, you're going to get a lot more meatier answers, and that will help you steer that conversation. The next step in the GROW method is to uncover, once you've discussed what success looks like, what the goal is, you're going to actually find out, well, where are they right now? Because someone could say to you, well, my goal is that I need to reach a huge fundraising target, or my goal is I need to launch a huge campaign. But you want to understand, where are they in that situation right now? So you can say things like, how enthusiastic do you feel about fixing this? What concerns you the most? What is getting in your way? What has stopped you from going further? You really want to unpick where they're situated now, because it's useless to say to someone, oh, you want to launch $1 million campaign? Well, you know, just go for it and work really hard. And if you don't know what resources there are, what's the person's mindset, what obstacles are they facing? So really understand what the reality is where they're situated now. So we've got the goal, we've got where they are in reality. And the next thing is to discuss through with them the options. So what they could do to bridge the gap between their current reality that you've just discussed and their goal that they've shared with you. So these are questions like, what options do you see at the moment? What would you do if you had a blank sheet of paper? What would that situation look like from other angles? What options would give you the best results? You see how open-ended these questions are? They're not saying to someone, well, I think that you should put together a timeline for your campaign, and I think that you should find out for who in the team has capacity to support on this, and I think that you must then produce a lovely campaign document. It's not telling them, it's rather them thinking through the options for themselves. All you are doing as the coach is asking the questions and steering the conversation. But your questions obviously need to respond to what the person's saying. So you need to be listening to what they say and responding back with an appropriate question. And I wanted to flag that the what would X person say is one of my favorite questions to ask someone, because we often have in our lives, say, maybe a really inspiring mentor, or maybe a role model. Or for me, I have a work coach that I work with, and I am so inspired by that person, and I feel so confident after I've had a conversation or I've worked with them. But that person is not with me the whole time, and I've often felt like, oh, I can't do it if I don't have my coach with me. But then I say to myself, Michelle, what would Coach Kim say in this situation? And then I suddenly feel like, oh, okay, I know what Coach Kim would say to me, and I know my options that I'm going to explore. So it makes me feel more confident that I can go ahead and do something, even though my Coach Kim is not right beside me, or I don't have a session with her at that time. I think that way. Or I would think, what would my line manager say about this? Or this particular person that I've worked with in the past, or mentor, whatever it is. So that's one of my favorite questions to ask someone who I'm coaching. But also it's a question that I ask myself when I'm applying coaching to me sometimes, is to say, Michelle, you know, I know you're in a tricky situation, but what would Coach Kim tell you to do? And then now that you've explored all these options, you're then going to discuss the way forward. So this is like the practical, the nitty-gritty of what exactly they're going to do next following your conversation. So which options are you going to go with? How are you going to do it? Who will support you? What will be the obstacles? How will you address them? So really unpacking the practical side to some of the things that you have explored in the options section. And then at the end, summing it all up by asking, how has this conversation helped you? So that's the GROW technique, the coaching method in a nutshell. Asking at the start someone what kind of issue they have and what they want to get out of your conversation. Then using that structure, that model of open-ended questions, them responding, you active listening, and going through those sections until you've come to a way forward, and then asking them, how has this conversation helped you? Now, sometimes conversations don't run in a linear pattern. When I was starting out doing coaching, I would be quite strict, like, we're not going to be discussing options now, we're first discussing this. Now that I feel more confident, I allow things to be a little bit more organic, but I do find it useful to follow that structure because it allows someone to think through all the different elements before coming to a way forward. So now, how to use this coaching method? As I said, active listening. Ask people questions and hear back what they're saying. Practice the coaching method. I've given an example of using the coach, coachee, and observer method. So when I was first learning the coaching method, I had 3 colleagues, so it would be 3 of us, and we would role play. One would be the coach, one would be the coachee, and one would be the observer. And the observer would give feedback to the coach about how they coach someone through a situation. And then we would rotate. And it's something that I've gone into organizations and I've just created those little groups of people to say, once a month, practice doing it for 15 minutes, get into those groups of 3s and practice and give people feedback when they are, how they're doing as a coach, because the observer will often see things that you yourself can't see when you're coaching someone. And the thing that I find the most difficult when you're using the coaching method is that you have to think of yourself as this neutral coach. I say neutral observations, but you're steering the conversation, but you're not actually giving your opinion, which is very, very difficult, especially if you are an experienced fundraiser, or you can see this problem a mile away and know exactly what is going to be happening. But actually, the whole point of coaching is not that you give someone the solution, but rather you coach them to reach that solution on their own. And often in a, especially if you're in a work environment which really praises people who are very confident in their opinions and they just like go out there and say what they think, it can be very hard to step back and think, oh, this is someone else has to come to that solution. It's not about me saying, oh, this is what you should do. Rather, it's what the coachee needs to come to their own solution. And you might not necessarily agree with that solution sometimes. And that's why I use the Goldilocks story, because it's so easy, especially when you've heard like it's the same issues that are presenting itself, or you experience and oh, I know this thing. I know how the difficulties with the chief exec, and you fill in the blanks yourself rather than really asking lots of open-ended questions to unpick the details of the issue and understand whether it is the same, exactly the same as what you experienced, or if it's something that's slightly different. So now I want to just go through some ideas about how to help colleagues with fundraising dilemmas. Is that coaching opportunities happen every day. Yes, you can use the coaching method as if you are a manager if you have like a monthly one-to-one with your line reports, then I will often have a space set aside to do some coaching, or like that's more formal. But try and incorporate it into everyday opportunities. And if you're not a manager, you can also still incorporate it into other everyday opportunities, because we are bombarded in fundraising with questions every single day that people come to you with and which they could probably solve. And so what I'm suggesting is to practice the coaching technique, although you don't have to use the GROW model itself, rather than answering someone's questions directly when they come with a problem, ask them a question back so that they start thinking for themselves. So, I just thought of some random questions that people will ask you. I know it's different depending on what area of fundraising you're in, but it's, things, someone can say to you, how much information can I share? Or who do you think I should invite to this event? Or what's the best way to work out the financials? I'm sure you can fill in all the other kinds of questions that you deal with, whether you are a manager or a non-manager. And then, as I suggested, try pose back a question instead of giving them the solution, so that you positioning it that they know the answer, but also that it's a practice for you to not just jump in and give someone the solution all the time. So things like, what would you like to do? What do you want to achieve? What are your options now? Or I use a lot, I say to someone, well, what do you think should happen? So that we get into this mindset where we acknowledge that everyone has experience and knowledge that they're bringing to the table, and that they also know the solutions. And the only time that this for me doesn't work, which I'll just say a disclaimer, is if you have someone in your team who is very, very new. So if someone's new to your brand new to your organization, or maybe brand new to the profession, I wouldn't be throwing questions back at them when they're still trying to work out how to use the coffee machine, or what the protocol is for thanking donors. So once they've got those bits sorted out and they feel more confident, let's say about 6 months into their role, then you can start throwing back these questions to people who ask you those questions. I also wanted to say how you can use coaching to develop colleagues, and this applies if you're a manager or non-manager, because coaching encourages people to think for themselves. It says that actually the solution lies with you, it doesn't lie with me. And what that means is that then people develop a sense of autonomy, a sense of responsibility, and that you actually feel motivated because you feel that, oh, I do know what I'm doing. I do know how to do something, and I can get on with it. And importantly, it frees up your time. So the more that people feel confident that they have the solution to something, the more free time you have, rather than just giving solutions. But that only happens when you can start asking colleagues questions all the time. As I said, regardless if you're a manager or you're non-manager. And that for me is a big one about freeing up your time. And I should also say, I don't know if I mention it before I go to the next point, is that what I love about the coaching method is that the coaching method is, as I said, about your role as a coach is about steering the conversation. It's not about knowing the answers. Remember, you're the neutral coach. You don't know that, you're not necessarily telling someone the answer, which means that if you are if someone comes to you with a fundraising dilemma, you don't necessarily need to know the answer, which was kind of a shock to me when I became a manager, because I thought, oh, now I have to know everything. But you actually don't, because if you use the coaching method, you can get the person who's asking the question to come up with the solution themselves. And I found this really useful. The more senior I've got in organizations, I'm taking on other functions where I know nothing about that function. So, currently at the moment, I am working for a museum where I had to take on the comms and marketing function. I've never done comms and marketing, but it actually doesn't matter because I use the coaching technique all the time. and I ask lots of open-ended questions. I steer the conversation. I don't have to know the answer. And if your ambition is to maybe be a director of fundraising or maybe be more senior, and you're never going to know the ins and outs of every single element of fundraising, of each kinds of fundraising, it doesn't really matter. So you can do that, because you can use just the coaching technique. And it also means that you can use the coaching technique. You don't have to be a line manager to do it. You can, if someone is your line manager, you can do coaching with your manager back at them, because it doesn't rely on you. As when you are the coach, it doesn't rely on you having this massive body of knowledge of every single kind of fundraising. It requires you to be a good listener, good at asking those questions, and steering the conversation in a structured way that will get the response. So that's why I suggest teach everyone that you know the coaching method and coach each other, so that it doesn't matter if you don't always have to go to your line manager. You know, when I first started coaching, I was working in a much bigger organization. And so I was on this manager program with people who were in finance, and we were doing coaching with them. I know nothing about finance, and they were more senior than me, but I was being the coach for them. And that's why it was successful. Because that person just didn't need, they knew everything they needed to know. They didn't need me to give them the answer. So that comes to the end of my session about how to use coaching. I'd love to hear, as Marcella said, if you have any questions, I would love to hear what you think, or thoughts, feedback, and to encourage you to just start incorporating little bits of coaching in all your interactions with your colleagues. Start asking questions back. Try putting them into situations where people come to you with challenges, or if you have big team meetings, rather than everyone like discussing something, rather break it down and maybe have individual coaching sessions. Print off the GROW method and just practice. And some of those questions sound really natural and will come easily. Others might not. You'll find your own groove. But I really would encourage you to start using it, because for me, it's really given me such a boost of confidence that I can manage other people, but that I can solve whatever fundraising crisis is going to happen, because I will be faced with lots of them, if I can coach myself, but also that if I teach others about how to do coaching, they can coach me through whatever situation, fundraising challenge I'm going to encounter, and will give me the confidence that I know the next steps and way forward. So thank you all so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. There is a very, very short survey at the end, 2 minutes. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I don't even know if it takes 2 minutes. I think it's 90 seconds, especially because this is a fairly new webinar that I've done. I'd love to hear if you loved it. I'd love to hear if you hated it. I'd love to hear. And if you want to hear more about how to be successful fundraising manager, would also love to hear if you're interested in those kinds of webinars and questions. Please be in touch. If something comes up, just contact me on LinkedIn. Would love to hear from you. Thank you all so much for today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Michelle. While we wait for people to type in their questions, if there are any, I'm going to go over a little link that I posted into the questions box maybe 10 minutes ago to a place where you can submit a short video testimonial. Please make sure to listen to this very well, because if you decide to share your learning experience through a video testimonial, we will give you a free registration for any of our premium webinars. That means you will get a premium webinar without cost. You let us know the name of the webinar you would like to attend along with the date, and we will do so for you happily without cost, like I said. Plus, you will get a chance to win a $500 Amazon gift card and a gold membership subscription for Charity How To. If you don't know what the gold membership entails, just know that it'll grant you access completely for free to everything we have to offer on our website, live premium webinars, recorded premium webinars, and micro lessons, which are a new product that we have available for you on the website. And you can share that membership with 3 more of your nonprofit colleagues. It'll last a year. Subscription for gold membership completely for free. The video you want to take a look at is videos.charityhowto.com. Again, I posted that link into the questions box, so make sure to take a look at that link if you want to take advantage of that opportunity. I see some questions that have come in. So Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Marcella. And thanks, Mary, for your question. You asked, how do you handle it if you're someone that you're coaching decides to do something that you know will not work or is wrong? So it's really about, again, how can you steer the conversation in a way that gets them to understand that it would be wrong. So asking things like, how would we, tell me more about what would happen if this went wrong, or just questions that would unpick what would happen if it didn't work out or go wrong. And then also for you to weigh up whether it is something that if they do it wrong, will it cause, how severe would it be? Because I don't mind people making mistakes who I'm coaching. But if it's going to cause, organizational damage, or going to cost us huge amounts of money, or damage a relationship, then that's one thing. But if it's just something where I know that, that probably won't work, I'm happy for them to make that mistake. I suppose it's dependent on the situation, but really I would try, then that's why it's about the active listening piece, is to think through what questions could I ask them that could really make them realize that that's probably not going to work out. And I might bring in examples. So if they've worked on something where something similar happened and it didn't work out, then say, tell me more about when you did this in the past and how successful it was. But using those open-ended questions, because all I want to do automatically is say to someone, do you know that won't work? Or I know this won't work. But coaching is about getting them to get to that point where they realize that that it won't work. So then, Stacey, you've asked that, so I suppose you've asked a similar thing, is, sometimes a person's logic is way off track or could lead to a bad outcome. It's about weighing up the impact of like a bad decision. Like, is it just not going to work, or how severe is that that wrong decision going to be? But steering it in a way that gets them to the point that they want. But I don't know about you, I have worked in situations where people have done things differently to me. They have worked, but it's not necessarily how I would have done it. But I suppose the questions you are asking is, for sure that's going to lead to a bad outcome, then it's about steering them in that way. But I also think it's especially, I find it very difficult, because this is my personality, is if someone doesn't do the thing that I want in the way that I want, then I find it very difficult to be supportive of the way that they're approaching something. But with coaching, it's forced me to realize, okay, I can't let my technique or my way of doing things be the only way. They have to come to that themselves, and they have to come to a way that is going to be good for them. And I'd say also, like, think about it. I know it's different because it's when a professional context, a negative outcome has ramifications, but also think about like a coaching call that you might have with a friend. So, I've been in situations where friends have asked for advice, and I've given them coaching in inverted commas, but asking lots of open-ended questions. A friend has still gone on to do the thing that I wouldn't do, but at least, I feel like I've discussed it, and I got to them. They got to the point where they wanted to be. which I know is not exactly the same thing because it's not a work environment, but there are often times when people do things that we don't like. And it's about how we steer that, the impact of it, and about assessing, is it that we don't like the approach, or is it that we know that the outcome will be really negative? So thank you so much for those questions. And I know it is complex and it's dependent on the situation. So thank you all once again. And Marcella, over to you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Please stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you soon again on another Charity How To webinar. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.